Addiction is a chronic disease. Millions of people worldwide suffer from substance and behavioral addictions. An addict's life is often unmanageable, leaving the addict and his or her family and friends feeling completely powerless over the disease. Without treatment, addiction can result in disability or premature death. You are listening to Making an Addict. My name is DJ Burr, and I'm an addict in long-term recovery. I'm a licensed psychotherapist, behavioral addiction specialist, and best-selling author of I Just Wanted Love, Recovery of a Codependent Sex and Love Addict, now available on Amazon, Audible, and iTunes. I intend to bring you different perspectives about addiction from various sources including other addicts in recovery, clinicians who treat recovering addicts, and families and friends of addicts to discover what makes an addict. Discretion is advised. To learn more about this podcast, check us out at makinganaddict.com or follow me on social media at DJBurr1022 on Facebook or The DJ Burr on Instagram. Good morning and welcome to another edition of Making an Addict. I'm DJ Burr, and today I have a guest. Her name is Allie Haydon. Allie, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you were able to be here today. Would you mind introducing yourself to our audience?
Sure. My name is Allie Haydon. I'm a person in long-term recovery from drugs and alcohol. My date of sobriety is 11/3/09. And I've been working with young people, teenagers, young adults, and their families in the greater Houston area for about the last 6.5, almost 7 years now.
Fantastic. Do you work for yourself or in an agency?
I actually do both. I work for a nonprofit agency called Palmer Drug Abuse Program that's been around since 1971. It's an alternative peer group, and that hosts 12-step based meetings for teenagers, young adults, and their families. And then we also offer some individual and family counseling services. And then I have a small private practice on Saturdays where I can see teenagers, young adults, and their families just kind of on my own that maybe aren't ready for the 12-step route or just kind of some harm reduction or some behavioral issues.
Well, goodness, it sounds like you're doing a lot for the recovery community. Thank you.
Well, I'm happy to do it. I love it.
Yeah, I have the same feeling. I really appreciate the work that we all do to give back, especially when we freely receive help from the rooms of recovery. Is that how you got started in this addiction work?
Yes, absolutely. Like I said, I got sober in November. And when I got about 18 months sober is when I first, I was actually a teacher. I taught 7th grade English for 1 year, and it was just not for me. But my favorite part of the day was that the kids would line up in front of my classroom like early in the morning and at lunch, and they just wanted to sit and talk about, their boyfriends or their girlfriends or their parents or their coach. And I really enjoyed that part, but not so much teaching 12 and 13-year-olds how to diagram sentences. So after that school year ended, I found a job at Palmer Drug Abuse Program as a youth group coordinator, which is like the younger group staff that just kind of basically they get paid to hang out and have fun and be enthusiastic about their recovery and facilitate groups. And so I did that for about a year. And it was just the greatest job, and I loved doing it. So I got my LCDC and kind of took off from there. And I've worked in several other agencies here in the greater Houston area kind of since then. And just the love and the passion has grown and grown and grown from that.
So it sounds like you've always had a desire to work with kids, seeing that you went through, I'm assuming, some schooling to become a teacher.
Well, if I'm being super honest, I got an English degree as my bachelor's because I was very active in my addiction at that time. And I honestly thought to myself, I could probably do a lot of drugs and drink a lot and still make pretty decent grades. And so that's what I did. And turns out I was right. And And so when I left school, it was December of 2008 is when I graduated, and there was just a hiring freeze all over the place. And, and I needed a job that fit in with my drinking. And, anywhere that started at 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. was just, out of the question. Anywhere that drug tested was out of the question. So I just waited tables. So it wasn't until I moved back home and my mom basically said, listen, you can't just sit around and drink and wait tables. Like, you need to do something. And she was a teacher and she's been in education. So she said, why don't you get your alternative teaching certification while you're living here? And so that's how I got started into teaching, and that sort of thing. But I even remember when I was still drinking, actually talking with my dad, after a night he had picked me up from the Brazos County Jail, and he was like, what are you going to do with your life? And I was like, I really think I should help young people with drug and alcohol issues because I know a lot about that. And this was before I even got sober. So thank God, that I was able to come into the rooms of recovery and actually have something to give these young people. But I think that passion was instilled early on.
Wow, what a gift to bring your experience to the youth, because I don't think we talk enough about the youth, and that's when it all starts for most of us.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
So can you
hear anybody in the rooms, they say, when did you start drinking? And usually it's around teenage years.
Exactly. Yep. And there might be some peer pressure, there might be some anxiety or depression, and they're looking to numb that. There can be trauma. There's a variety of things that lead, our youth to engaging in addictive behaviors, not just with substances, but any type of addictive behavior. So it's good that we have these conversations and reach out to them, because I think they're often ignored.
Absolutely. Well, and I would say, I've actually heard someone talk about their own recovery that I really identified with, and they just said, first it was fun, then it was fun with problems, then it was just problems. And I was like, oh my gosh, yes, that's exactly how it was. Because, I don't think I could really honestly say that there was some big traumatic event that happened in my life. There was some stuff going on in my household. My dad is an addict of a different kind, and he is not in recovery. And so I think some things were kind of coming up. And, as I got a little bit older, I could kind of see that and hear what was going on and make some connections, and it wasn't making a whole lot of sense to me. But I mean, really, the reason I started drinking and stuff like that was because the cute boys that I liked were drinking and partying, and they were all punk rock and looked cool and stole beer and, that kind of thing. And I just really fell in love with that. And so I think for me, my addiction really just got started that it was just fun, and I think that's how it gets started for a lot of young people. And unfortunately, it's just kind of like rolling the dice a lot of times. If we're genetically predisposed to addiction, or, some other stuff ends up happening while we're in our early stages of addiction that causes some trauma or causes some shame cycles. And then we start using to kind of calm those emotions or calm those shame cycles or calm that trauma.
That's true. Absolutely. I can remember, having those experiences and wanting to be calmed or numb and reaching out to, other people, places, and things to try to make that happen. I'm curious if there were any consequences for you early on when you were drinking.
So it's been described to me, when I tell my story, that they kind of describe me as a low bottom, high functioning alcoholic. And, so I guess I can tell my story and y'all can decide for yourself, if that's the case. But, I was able to graduate college, but also, got arrested pretty frequently, lost jobs, lost relationships, I had some health issues that came up because of my drinking and using. But in high school, when I kind of first started, I worked a full-time job. I took AP classes, And I had a horse that was kind of like that was my extracurricular activity, is I rode horses and I went to horse shows and everything. But how my addiction kind of played a part in that was how I was able to do all that stuff is I would wake up at 4:30 in the morning and, do some speed, drive to the barn, go ride early in the morning, drive to school, and then go work at night, and then get, a couple hours of sleep, and then wake up and do it all over again. And usually I would, use stimulants in order to keep me going all day, and then I would have to drink or smoke pot or something like that in order to kind of bring me down at night. And so I think, my drug use and my alcohol use kind of assisted me in having this very high functioning life. And I know my parents and I got into a lot of arguments, and they knew what was going on, and they kind of tried to catch me and do what they could. But I remember my mom telling me, I just wanted you to be happy. And I just thought, if you could just be happy, if you could just have your horse and you could just, have your life, then you wouldn't be doing all of this stuff. But of course, as we all know, when we get sucked into that addiction cycle, it doesn't matter, and what happened to me is what happens with a lot of people. We end up losing the thing that we really love, the thing that makes us really happy. And that's exactly what happened to me. I didn't ride a horse for 7 or 8 years once my addiction really got going.
Oh my. And that was a major self-care tool for you.
Yes.
Oh man. Yeah, that sucks when that happens.
Yes. And the crappy part, I remember exactly the time of day. I remember where I was standing. I remember what I was wearing when I made the decision, a few years after high school. And I said, I would rather go get drunk than go to the barn. And then that was the time. I mean, that was the decision. And I didn't go back for years after that.
Do you wish that your parents would have said something or done something different?
That's hard for me to answer because, in retrospect, I look back as an adult. I'm like, man, I hear my mom and she was like, well, I was really considering sending you to a therapeutic boarding school. And I'm like, that probably would have been a really good idea. Why didn't you do that? And she was like, I just thought, if you had your horse, like maybe you would be happy you wouldn't do all this stuff. And I think my mom had a lot going on with my dad's addiction, and my grandmother was very sick at the time. And so I think she was just really trying to keep her family together and keep everything afloat. I work with so many young people, and they just, it's so difficult for them to see where their parents are coming from. They're just so resentful and they're so angry. If you should just let me be, is kind of the anthem that I hear a lot. And it's hard. And so how I don't have children of my own. I have a stepdaughter whom I love. She's 11 years old and growing up way too fast. But how I kind of explain it to them is, I have lots of dogs. So I'm like, my dogs will never understand when I try and explain to them not to eat certain things, like hard plastic on your remotes. My dogs love to eat the hard plastic on the remotes. I'm like, they literally cannot understand the words that I'm saying, like, this is going to hurt you. So what do? I pop them on the nose and I say, no. And they look at me hurt and confused, like, why are you doing this? I'm enjoying this treat right here, your remote. And it's just like that with kids and parents, I think a lot of times is, the kids just kind of look confused and dazed, like, I don't understand. This is so much fun right now. And the parents are like, no. And they just can't understand sometimes.
Yeah, I think it's also important to say a little bit more than no, but to maybe to give some information. And I think, because I see the parents who say no, and that's it, there's no information. I think it's good to share when it's appropriate of why you're concerned about the behavior or the drug use or alcohol use, to explain why you're concerned.
Yes. So I actually last weekend just put on a seminar called How the Crap Do I Talk to My Teen? And
that sounds great.
It was for parents to and a lot of times what I talk with families about in my sessions is just kind of speaking that that internal dialogue out loud. And we talk a lot about how, we make a lot of assumptions when we're communicating with people, and we think that they know where we're coming from, and we think that they can, that they've filled in a lot of those blanks that is in our minds, but they haven't. And so we have to we have to work with parents on kind of speaking some of that out loud, and the teenagers of, I'm really concerned about you. This is the behavior that I'm seeing. What the fear that it brings up in me is that because you're doing this, because you're making bad decisions here, that I'm afraid you're going to make bad decisions somewhere else, and that's going to endanger your life. And so that's why I'm yelling at you, is right. Because that fear is igniting this, this reaction. And just kind of speaking some of those assumptions and some of that internal dialogue out loud in a calmer way can really help the teens and the families have a better understanding of where everybody's coming from.
Right. And sometimes it's really good to be clear about what the natural consequences are and the logical consequences, and to be really clear about it. And I think that's helpful, especially for a teenager. I think they're able to comprehend, natural and logical consequences.
Absolutely. And that was actually a point of discussion during the seminar, was, giving some examples of what natural consequences are. And, and I've explained to parents, and I explain it to the teens when I first meet them. Listen, you're an adult in the making. Biologically speaking, your body's already telling you, you need to be procreating, you need to be out on your own. That's what it's telling you. But our society has put something on you saying that until you turn this magical age of 18, you're still a child. And then all of a sudden you turn this magical age and, okay, you need to hurry up and get it together. You need to hurry up and be an adult. And that just seems really unfair, And so being an adolescent just really is kind of a crappy time, because their bodies are telling them they're ready to go, but society is telling them, nope, you're still a kid.
Right. Yeah, it's a lot of pressure, especially when there's boundaries that are preventing you from working out that natural inclination to explore and, like you said, procreate and connect outside of the family system. But sometimes those boundaries are helpful. Right?
Yes. Yep.
So how much time do you spend with a youth trying to help him or her understand about addiction?
Oh, man. As much time as humanly possible. So the beautiful thing about Palmer Drug Abuse Program, and we have shortened that, we call it PADU, is that they can be, the younger group starts at 12.
Wow.
And goes from 12 to 17, and then the older group goes from 18 to 25. And I have been really, really fortunate that no matter where I've worked in the greater Houston area, I've worked with adolescents. And so I've known some of these kids for 5 or 6 years now. Like, they were my clients when I was working in the rehab facility on the adolescent unit. And then they went to the sober high school, and I got to go work at the sober high school here in Houston. And then they participated in an alternative peer group. And so when I came over to PADAP, I got to be their counselor at their alternative peer group. So there's some of these kids I've literally gotten to watch grow up and become beautiful young adults. There's 2 or 3 of them I'm thinking about right now that, they've got 5 years sober, 4 years sober.
Wow.
3 years sober, and are being super helpful to people. And so, that's been the beautiful part about kind of Houston's continuum of care, is we have all of these amazing facilities, and we're a big community of recovery, but we're also like this very tight-knit community of recovery. So I realize that I'm straying from your question just a little bit, so I want to get back to it. But so as far as spending time with the youth, talking to them about addiction, we make it very clear at PADAP that only they can decide if they're an addict or an alcoholic, or how they want to identify. all we can do is assist them in kind of looking at the unmanageable parts of their life that has kind of led them there. And, how can we work with you on, on putting those pieces of your life back together? And, maybe you don't plan on staying sober forever, and that's okay. We can meet you there. But for now, the boundaries that you've been given in your home, or the boundaries you've been given by the law, or the boundaries you've been given by your school, is that you need to remain substance free. And so how can we help you get through these next couple of years and have your brain develop a little bit, and just develop some better coping skills and that sort of thing, and go on and lead a happy, healthy life.
Sounds like an amazing program. It sounds like a lot of resources are provided to the youth and to the family to educate them and support them on this journey. Because like you said, for some of them, they're 5 years sober and they've been doing this work for 5 years, right? They've learned so much about themselves and addiction along the way. That's great. I you talked about the sober high school. I'm like, what the hell is that? Because we need more of that.
Yes, we do. And actually, if you want to check out something that's a really great resource, there's a documentary that was made about the greater Houston area and the sober high school that was here, and kind of the other programs that feed into that. And it's called Generation Found. And I think you can download it on iTunes and Amazon and Vudu and all of those places.
Okay.
But it's a great representation of kind of how all of the programs kind of work together here.
Fantastic.
To serve the young people.
Do you know if they focus on behavioral addictions at all?
So some of the alternative peer groups focus or have kind of a piece to that. There is another inpatient, outpatient facility here in Houston called the Center for Success and Independence. That's a great resource. And they have a substance abuse program, but then they also have, they're mainly, I think, behavioral health. And so they do a lot of DBT therapy and those sorts of things. So kids that come to PADAP don't necessarily have to have a primary substance abuse issue. They can be there. And in fact, we've got some siblings that attend with their, with their brothers or sisters. And so the only requirement for membership in our program is a desire to live a chemical-free life. And so if they're there for self-harm or for sex addiction or for anger, or something like that, they're more than welcome, because as we all know, the steps work.
Yes.
You just have to replace kind of that one word with really anything. I'm also a recovering rageaholic. And so, I've had to explain with some of my kids that, man, I absolutely work my steps on that rage because it's adrenaline and it gets me hyped up and it makes me feel powerful and large. And this is something my body gets high on. And so I'm recovering from that as well.
Well, I'm so glad to hear that you're able to support not only the substance abusers, but also those who are struggling with the behavioral addictions. That's my specialty, and we're not having a lot of conversations in society about behavioral addictions, at least not as much as I think we should be. And so I'm glad that there are some resources out there for those kids who are struggling with other concerns. I mean, when these kids are in pain, they're just looking to escape the pain. And if they don't have all the resources they need or the information they need, they start looking for it, right? And they start experimenting, and that can cause great harm to their young lives. And so I'm grateful that PADAP exists and other programs like it. So what's your favorite part of your job?
Oh my gosh. So we have sober functions on the weekends that are Fridays and Saturdays. Now I'm kind of senior staff, so I don't come on Saturdays all the time anymore. But PADAP has kind of had this long-standing tradition that we do this one particular function, and it's called Dope Fiend Olympics.
Wow.
And it's just craziness for like 5 hours. So the kids get into teams, and then the staff always has a really great time kind of coming up with different contests and games. And it's a little bit of a mix between like Fear Factor and the Minute to Win It. I don't know if you've watched any of those games, but they'll have them do kind of really funny things for a minute.
Interesting.
That's like a race or a contest or a relay race or something like that. So this one, just to give you an example, we got a couple of slip and slides, and we put baby oil all over the slip and slides. and then we had the kids, and they had to do the wheelbarrow, where one kid like has to walk on their hands and the other person holds them by their feet. Well, so they had to do that across the slip and slide with baby oil. They broke an egg into their mouth of the person who's the wheelbarrow, and they had to hold the egg in their mouth and then go spit it into a cup at the end of the slip and slide.
Oh my word.
So it was gross and hilarious, and so that's always a really fun time. So I think my favorite part of the job is just getting to watch the kids actually experience what it's like having fun sober, and what it's like having fun and doing crazy stuff, because these are adrenaline seeking kids, doing crazy things that don't require harming others or harming themselves.
Right.
And
it's good to know that we can have fun sober.
Absolutely. And one of my favorite memories was when I was a youth group coordinator at PADU the first time around, way back in the day. And I just remember we were like party carring to a laser tag. We were going to go play laser tag, I think. And we just had this really fun techno song on. And this kid who was brand new was just rocking it in the back seat. And I remember him saying, "I've never had this much fun. I didn't think I could do this sober." And I just remember that bringing like the biggest joy to my heart, because that's exactly what I want. Like, that's what I'm here to do, is just, bring you this happiness, happy, joyous, and free feeling that's uninhibited by substances and, some crazy attention seeking, negative attention seeking behaviors.
Goodness. It sounds, the party that you guys have sounds really wild and fun, and it sounds great that you can do it sober, right? And
Yes.
enjoy that, the fellowship. It sounds like fellowship is really important there at PADAP, and so I'm curious if the staff members have their own type of activities that they can do without the kids, so they can stay refreshed when working with this really difficult topic.
That's a great question. A big part of my job is focusing on the staff and taking care of the staff, because they're all early 20s. These are young adults, and all of my staff right now, let's see, 3 of them have been in PADAP. One was not, but one was actually a client of mine when I worked at a different facility. And so I know these kids, and now they're these wonderful young adults. And so a big part of my job and a big part of my responsibility is making sure that they feel taken care of. So we do some check-ins with each other and that sort of thing. And we try and do some fun stuff together when we can. The other really great thing about the Houston area is there's TexiePaw, which is the Texas Conference of Young People in AA.
Oh.
And since Houston is such a big recovery community, there's a really big TexiePaw following. And so I know a lot of them kind of, and so we've got social events for young adults in recovery at least once or twice a month. And so I know some of them choose to engage in that. And some of them, they love their home groups, and so they're like, my home group has been a noon meeting on Mondays, and that's just the meeting that I go to every week. And, and so we want to support them in going to their home group meetings and going to their birthday nights, and everything like that. And we check in with each other and make sure that we're feeling okay. 'Cause sometimes this can be really energizing work, but then it can also be really, really draining work.
Yeah, it really can be. I'm a therapist, and so I'm sitting with people who are working through the trauma and also educating them about addiction and also recovery. And it's exhausting, but I love it. It's the best work I've ever done, but it is exhausting. So I'm glad to hear that there's support for the staff too, because we don't want them to get burnt out, because the youth need them.
Right.
And so that's great.
I try and tell them all the time, y'all are the most important people to this organization, because y'all are on the front lines. You're doing it. You're showing enthusiasm for recovery. So how I don't know. I'm like a big foodie, so I'm always buying them food, donuts and snacks and pizza and stuff like that. It's because I'm just like, if they can get fed and, feel like they've gotten some recognition and that sort of thing, then by all means. And, when they try and ask off, I want to get off because I want to go to my birthday night celebration. And it's during my normal work hours. I'm like, great, go do that. We will get somebody to cover you, because that's really important that you're participating in your own recovery right there.
Great. And then you're modeling appropriate behavior for the youth, right? They can go,
yes.
The staff can go take care of themselves, and the youth can see that that's important.
Absolutely.
Nice job. Now, does your family support the work that you're doing?
Oh, hell yes. They're like, please stay in recovery. We do not want Tornado Allie back in our lives.
Oh, my goodness.
So, yes, they're very supportive. My husband is actually in recovery as well. I met him in recovery.
Nice.
And so, this Saturday, he and I are going to go to a convention over in Beaumont. For the day. We're not going to stay the weekend or anything, but we're just going to go early in the morning and bring a couple of friends of ours from our home group and just kind of go to the convention for the weekend. So, I try and fill up my recovery and participate in that, and that fills me up. I don't ever get tired of it. Well, I guess maybe that's a little bit of a lie. There's been times where I've kind of been like, oh my gosh, this again, but it's definitely more so I'm feeling filled up by my own recovery.
Right. Recovery, being engaged in your recovery is work.
Yeah.
It's a job, right? It's a 24/7 job. And, we can't take a break from it, because that leaves us vulnerable to the addiction reemerging and causing havoc in our lives. And so we have to acknowledge that this is work. And I try to tell my clients, like, this is work, and in my opinion, that you're going to be doing for the rest of your life. And it's going to look differently as you progress, but it is still work. And so I think that's an important message to convey, is that we have to do this work because we're worth it.
Right. Well, and a lot of times the conversations that I have with my kiddos is, listen, when we first get sober, what we're really trying to avoid is the pain of the past.
Yep.
We kept experiencing these negative consequences, and we didn't like who we were, and nobody else liked who we were. And so we're really trying to just avoid going back to a lot of that pain. However, when you kind of move into what we like to call second stage recovery, the point is that we're actually moving towards something. So we're no longer just trying to stay sober to avoid pain, but we're actually actively pursuing recovery in order to achieve things. And what I've let them know is it just doesn't feel like a whole lot of sacrifice anymore. I don't feel like I'm sacrificing and giving up drugs and alcohol as much as I did in maybe the first couple of years. Now it's just kind of like, I don't have time for that. And I like how my body feels, and I like how my brain feels, and my mental health is good, and my relationships are good. There's no need for me to lubricate any of that with drugs or alcohol.
That's a great way of putting it. Thank you. Now, I have a couple questions. What do you say to a parent who is curious about addiction and recovery, and they're wanting to get help for their youth? Do you have like a story that you relate to them? Is there just like a bullet points that you point out? What's that like?
Well, I guess I encourage the parents I encourage the parents to seek out the resources in their community first and foremost.
Okay.
And so I typically start with giving them all of the resources that I've put together. And usually I'll kind of listen to their story a little bit and maybe highlight the ones that I feel like might be the most helpful. I also encourage them to, either just come to a PADU meeting, and, because we have parent meetings that are kind of similar to Al-Anon, but it's specifically for PADU parents. And I'm like, the thing is you can come to a PADU parent meeting without your kid even being here. They don't need to be sober. They don't even need to be in our program in order for you to get your assistance here.
Nice.
And so a lot of times, I just really encourage the parents, because I really believe that small change generates big change. And the thing is if the addict is not ready or willing to get sober or do what it takes, that doesn't mean that you have to continue draining your serenity about it. And so I really try and help the parents help themselves. Because once they start establishing boundaries and that sort of thing, with themselves and, feeling better in their own household, even with the tornado maybe still living there, it's going to get more uncomfortable for the tornado person.
Yep.
And so they're either going to need to kind of, situate themselves to where they can live in that house peacefully, or they're going to blow themselves right out of there, in some form or fashion. And so a lot of times that's, I really do encourage the parents to really focus on you and get the help that you need, because your household will change because of that.
Good. I'm glad.
I hope that answers your question.
Yes, for sure. I think a lot of the parents are scared when they suspect that something's going on with their kid, and they don't know exactly where to go or what to ask. And it sounds like you provide great information. And I love that they could come to the PADU parents meeting without their kids being enrolled in services with you guys. That's fantastic.
Absolutely.
Well, that's a great community resource. How long has PADU been in existence now?
Since 1971. So 46 years. Yeah, we've been around for a long time.
Wow, that's amazing.
Well, and how I kind of started, if you want to hear the quick little story,
sure.
is it started in Palmer Episcopal Church, which is down in the Med Center in Houston. And that's actually the church that houses the sober high school right now.
Oh.
But so it started over there. Father Martin was helping this man who was an addict and was working with him. And after he kind of got sober, he said, you really need to go pass it on. And they had like a basketball court outside and that sort of thing. And he said, do you see those youth out there? You need to go talk with them and share your experience and go work with them. And so he started doing that. And that's kind of just how PADU got formed, is they just started having meetings of young people in the basement at Palmer Church. And it's, taken on many different forms since then. And I feel like we're kind of in a really exciting growth period right now, too, where, we might kind of be in our next growth spurt, so to say. So I think some really big things are going to start happening here in the next couple of years. And that sort of thing. So that's kind of how PADU's gotten started, is just one person, again, passing it on and doing what we've all been taught to do in recovery, is give it back.
Now, the messaging that you guys have, does that evolve as, let's say, technology evolves? Do you, for instance, do you reach out to youth via social media? Because that's where most of them are now.
So we do. We have a Palmer Drug Abuse Houston Facebook page. I believe we're also on Pinterest. We haven't quite figured out. I don't think we have a Twitter or a Snapchat yet. But I know for me and my staff, a lot of times we friend the kids on Snapchat and that sort of thing.
Okay.
One, because it's a little bit of, they'll post themselves like getting high on Snapchat.
Oh.
And I'm like, hey, you got something to be honest about? And they're like, I don't know what you're talking about. And I'm like, well, Snapchat has a different story to tell. And they're like, oh, damn it. So I'm like, yeah, don't friend your counselor and then post a picture of yourself getting high, but whatever. That's okay. So we do try and just keep connected with them via those sorts of those sorts of things as well. Yes.
Cool. So you guys are evolving as well. Good, good.
Yes.
Because, the youth, I swear, there's like every week there's like some new thing that they're on.
I know.
I can't keep up, and as a therapist, I try to help the parents keep up too. Because sometimes, a parent comes into me for their own help, and there's something going on with their kid, and they don't know how to reach the kid, and they're not aware about Snapchat and all these other things, right? And so it's like education. I have to be able to give them some information and share that.
Our PADU parents we really are a big, giant family. And our PADU parents will send me all kinds of links and information. And they're like, hey, I just found out that I can, look at my kid's phone on my computer. And, here's how you would do that. Do you want to, pass it on to the other parents? Oh. And so they are really a big source of resources and that sort of thing, and kind of growth and learning, because we all just kind of pitch in and share our information as we learn it.
Nice. I love an engaged parent. Fantastic.
Oh, yes. Wow. Oh, our parents are very, very, very involved.
So, Allie, before we wrap up, I wonder, is there a message that you want to leave with our audience, primarily for the young folks who are maybe contemplating getting some help? Any words of wisdom?
Sure. I guess, the beautiful thing about recovery is nobody tries to sell you anything. I was always very skeptical of, being sold on something and what's the catch here. And the other thing is, what I found in recovery is that the adults seem to have a lot more integrity than a lot of adults that I've met in the past. And so I'm trying to sum up in a nutshell or something like that, all of this wisdom or something, but I don't think I'm finding the right words. I don't know. I guess I would just say, what have you got to lose? If you're contemplating it, what have you got to lose?
Try it out.
A lot of times it doesn't cost anything. There's free anonymous programs everywhere. And yeah, try it out. And I think a lot of people in anonymous programs say stuff like this, try it for 90 days, really, really try it. Do the steps, get the sponsor, try and stay abstinent from all substances, or whatever your targeted behavior is for 90 days, really, really try it. And then if it's not working, if your life doesn't dramatically improve, or you're not happy with the results that you're getting, you can always go back. And then you've just used 90 days. That's 3 months. It's no time at all in the scheme of things.
That's right. Yeah, I like that. Just try it out for 90 days. That's it.
Right.
And really work it. I have some people that want to do 90 days and they want to go every other week. That's not 90 days.
No, it's every day for 90 days.
Right. It's every day for 90 days.
And taking all of the suggestions, if the suggestions are get a sponsor and call them every day, do that. If the suggestions are work a step a week or, every 2 weeks or something, really, really do that. Even if the suggestions don't make a whole lot of sense, try it.
Try it.
And yeah, just try it and see what happens.
Yeah, I always tell my people, I'm like, look, I'm not going to encourage you to do anything that would hurt you. And I'm definitely not going to encourage you to do anything I haven't tried.
Right. Exactly.
Wow. Well, thank you for being with us today and sharing this amazing resource that PADU is. And I am just so blown away by the history of the program and all of the resources that are in Texas. I just what? I had no idea.
Yeah. Yeah, we're a big recovery community here.
Wow,
for sure.
I love that, and I know we have some Texas listeners out there, so definitely look up PADU. Can you give us the web address?
Yes, it is paduhouston.org is our website.
Fantastic.
And then my private practice website is just Allie, Allie Haydon, HAYDON.com.
Yay!
And you can find out a little bit more about me.
Well, thank you so much. It was so great to talk to you, And anytime you want to come,
having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. Anytime you want to come back and talk about any new resources, just let me know.
Oh, I would love to.
Alrighty.
All right. Well, thank you so much, DJ.
Yes, thank you. It was great. Have a wonderful day.
Today's guests, Allie Haydon and the PADU program, are based in Houston, Texas. As some of you may know, Houston was hit by Hurricane Harvey. If you or anyone you know are able to provide support for PADU and the work that they're doing, please consider going to their webpage, paduhouston.org/support, and offering some donations to them. I want to make sure that they are able to keep those doors open for those youth in recovery, because what they're doing is so important, and not many programs exist like PADU. So if you are able, please consider donating. paduhouston.org/support. That's PDAPHOUSTON.org/support. Thank you for considering. Thank you for joining the discussion today on Making an Addict. In closing, I want you to understand that there are various opinions about addiction and what makes someone an addict. The opinions expressed here on today's show are those of the person who made them. I suggest you take what you heard, process it, and decide for yourselves what you believe in. If you have feedback or want to tell your story on the show, let me know by emailing makinganaddict@gmail.com, or you can reach me on social media. Again, I'm on Facebook and Twitter at DJBurr1022 and The DJ Burr on Instagram. Lastly, thank you for giving me the opportunity to be of service. Recovery saved my life, and I will be forever grateful. I will keep giving back every opportunity I am given. Tune in next time to witness our ongoing discussion on Making an Addict. Making an Addict is produced by DJ Burr and the Recovery Legacy Network. Today's music features tracks by CDK. Learn more at makinganaddict.com.